Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here again, and we're gonna guess what? Talk about Spooky 2 a little bit more, particularly their scam with biofeedback. And this is what makes this entire product very questionable, as with everything else they do, because it's mixed technologies and theories and everything else that don't make much sense, and there's no research been put into these areas virtually whatsoever in general. And certainly he hasn't done anything as a so-called, we're not really sure if he is an engineer or not. Even if he is, so what? That's a negative, not a positive. Certainly, most of the people out there that use these machines, from Delaware to Ruth Drown to Rife himself, to Abrams, none of them were engineers, not whatsoever. And none of them really had any kind of engineering or electrical background. Of course, Bob Beck did, of course. But none of these people really did. And neither did, of course, Royal Raymond Rife. And all of his information is clouded in mystery, and we don't really know what any of it is. And certainly John White didn't figure it out, nor did any of his compatriot boobs that put together his products. And before I get into the ridiculousness of these biofeedback units, which have been out there for years, by the way, this is nothing new, where you put your hand on something and it's supposed to tell you through some sort of electromagnetic or other sensing, which is totally worthless. And while it's interesting, and maybe in 20, 30, 50 years, we'll get some quality feedback there. But in general, this kind of sensing is not possible. It gets back into the problem with taking a drop of blood and being able to detect everything from it. I think Elizabeth Holmes found out what those kind of ridiculous claims got her was a prison sentence for making such stupid statements that could not be backed up. And obviously, when you get into science, you're going to find out how it doesn't work. I mean, plain and simple. You get blood, you get a small amount of it, couldn't get the results. So this turned out to be basically a giant fraud. And we're getting into that with the Spooky 2 as well. And I don't want to hear his crybaby, I want to save the world, my grandmommy died, my pet rat died. I don't want to hear that garbage. I've heard so much crap from people that's unbelievable. Just complete and total lies. I would never cheat and steal from you. And they all do. All these people claim they're in it for some other reason or on some sort of bizarre reality that they come from. And ultimately gets back into some goofball belief system, or falling back on some fake or bad traditional science, which has brought us no answers, or some even worse science that you get from these alternative people. And they like to throw around people's names like Tesla and Einstein, who was basically against quantum physics, by the way, people. He was basically just a trumped up person of no value whatsoever who rewrote a few papers and was against quantum physics. So he argued with Niels Bohr, who was the quantum physics expert there, and never till his dying day admitted that quantum physics was valuable. So to throw Einstein around is even more amusing and ignorant on these people's part. So let's get into this area here, and let's talk about some engineering in general. Not only is all his stuff old, primitive, and huge, it doesn't seem to have much smarts there. Now, it states that it is recommended that you use 2 of the basic X generators, whatever they're called. Some really imaginative name. XP, ooh, whatever it is. You couldn't even give them a name where you could differentiate it a little better from the others. Again, shows you very poor thinking and a poor organizer. Now, why couldn't he build into the first generator the other generator that you needed? So you had a proper unit to start off with and could do the procedures properly. But he did not do that. He did not do that because he wants that $1,000 that actually this system costs. They tell you it's low cost, but it really isn't, because you don't get the full system. So the point is, you're getting a seat with a steering wheel in front of you and a body on it. You know, like when you buy a car. You want gas pedals? You want a windshield? Well, it's going to cost you more. But at least the cars that are strippies, at least you can use them. This doesn't work well unless you have two generators. One to pick your nose and one to pick your ears. So the whole idea is that, so you're getting a bogus unit to begin with. Now, this again shows the lack of integrity from this organization. It's clunky, it's big. I don't know how well it's made. He claims he is using analog parts that he gets from the United States. Well, they must be made in China, sent to the United States, and then he buys them again because nothing is made in the United States. So the joke of all that stuff is amusing. And I don't believe that either, because again, he's misstating things. He's not using good analog parts like vacuum tubes, valves as they call them in European lands. None of this is he using, which really have some effects and been proven. Again, bad engineering. Everything he builds is too big because he claims it's analog. But secondly, he's not building a good box where you have to have two of them really to do the job effectively. So he's playing another game there. He suckers you in with a low price, around $400 at the time. And then, well, you need another one. That's another $400. When you add in all the little extras, you're dropping $1,000 when you can get a good frequency machine for half of that price. $300-400. There's some excellent units out there that are ready to go right out of the box. His is not. You have to download all sorts of stuff. You're going to have to use a personal computer to be able to use this stuff. It's a complicated mess. Now, that's another bad engineering. Maybe you did go to engineering college, John, because you really do everything backwards. So the whole idea is you've got to need that. And of course, that's never going to be enough. Well, that's just the regular frequencies that Rife didn't really use. What Rife really used was plasma balls. Yeah. They used to fly out of his ears when he was doing research. Plasma balls. Ooh. Did I see them on an episode of The Simpsons? I think I did. So the whole idea is that this is what you really need because that's what Rife really used. And of course, he doesn't seem to talk about microscopes or other things, which is really what Rife was all about. Rife, basically, only way his technology ever was proven or was worked in general is how to see things under his special microscope to find out if it was working. Rife had all sorts of problems, if you want to believe, including the fact of killing a lot of people because he detoxed them too quickly, which, of course, John White recommends all sorts of detox and all sorts of things going on. And he's not really emphasizing programs that will clean your liver and kidneys out, which you should be doing first. So there's all sorts of other things that you have to. Your body is like an automobile. And the first thing you do with an automobile, if you want to make it keep running, or even if you're trying to diagnose something, is make sure it's got clean oil and that it has clean water and that the system is working. Your water pump is kind of like your blood pump and your heart. And your oil filters and oil is kind of like your heart and blood to a certain extent. So, it seems to me that there's a lot of giant openings here, but if you take one of his 8 hours, 60 days, 9 days, 8 year courses, you will be able to figure out how to use these big boxes of expensive junk. So we have to be really careful here. He has absolutely no idea what scalar energy is, how to use it or not. He's using some very bizarre multi-wave oscillator system claiming to project physical energies through electromagnetism, which cannot be done to affect matter at a distance. Just is unproven. So this is all the stuff that he's throwing out there. And of course, remember, this all doesn't work. You got to get yourself a silver colloidal unit, Back in the 1890s, we were using this silver. I used to suck on silver dollars I got in Vegas to heal me. So the whole idea is this is the kind of stuff that goes on. Of course, colloidal metals are very interesting. There claims to be a lot of research with them. I'm not sure what they do or not. I've used them for years with limited to no success. But people love this stuff because most people are living in a mental illness. So when they do something like this, they feel special and claim they were healed, but we don't know if they were ever sick to begin with. And of course, you're never going to get any proof of stuff like that from John. He's too busy hiding in the Chinese restaurant in Peking, eating Mandarin duck. So I just don't know what's going on there and what the entire process is in general there. But if you're going to spend millions and millions of dollars on advertising, well, spend a few $100,000 and get some real tests. And I don't want to see goofball testimonials for people sitting in their car, sitting in a hotel room, or anything else in general. And you should have the credibility, and you certainly have the money to go talk to these people physically and take some real film, talk to their doctors, etc., and verify your work. But nobody wants to prove the validity of their work or not. They just want to keep shoveling in the money. And if you sell enough instruments, you're going to have a loyal following of goofballs that have nothing wrong with them to begin with, and a mixed of maybe a sick person or two. But like the Dutch person in Holland, was that double saying that? Who had Lyme disease, who, after a year of using the unit, I feel a little better. Click the wooden shoes together. So the whole idea is that this is the kind of nonsense. So it wasn't anything about, I feel a little better. Yeah, well, we all feel a little better. Life looks a lot better after a couple of cocktails. That I can prove to everybody. So the whole idea is that we have to understand the reality of what's out there. Now let's get into the final fraud here, which has been perpetrated on people for many years now. And that's the sensing of energy cells, which is energy flows through the body. This is very difficult to do, particularly without, I would think, extensive equipment hooked up to you. And of course, you're going to only be sensing the electromagnetic flowing through your body. But of course, that's part of your body. What keeps your body going is that, quote, scalar field around it, this non-electromagnetic field around it, that is energizing the electromagnetic primitiveness of your body. But, your brain works through shooting off these electromagnetic fields. And if those stop, like it can stop with people that have seizures, like a light switch, and you're gone, baby, and you don't remember nothing. It's like turning off a light bulb. That's it. Click, gone. You don't have a chance to think, do anything else. You're done. And you remember nothing. You fall to the ground, and then your body shakes to try and get the light switch back on. So, unfortunately, I was a witness to this many times with a relative who had seizure problems. Now, the bottom line is that all of this is something that we have to look at. Now, there's been this fantasy pushed by basically these fake machines for, it must be 30 years now. And they're pushed by big money people because these are electronic machines that sell for tens of thousands of dollars that you see at health food fairs and other places where you're supposed to be able to just put your hand in it. Not a very good way of checking things, just your hand. But, there are books written on this, and I've recently been doing research into the hands used for medical diagnostics. Isn't it interesting? I wasn't even aware of this. We've all heard of hand reading in the metaphysical way, your lifelines and other lines that say how your life may or may not go. I've always found that fascinating. I've never really done any research of the validity of it. But the bottom line is that apparently there's several books that go back to the 1950s by American doctors even, that state that the use of the hand for medical diagnosis, treatments, and etc. Very, very fascinating. But of course, it makes sense. One of the whole. And of course, we have the fact that people have been using the acupuncture meridians for years. These energy flows through your body. And I believe that this is some of the stuff that these machines want to claim they can read electronically. Now, it is difficult. Now, what you do when you go to an acupuncturist, I'm assuming we all understand what that is, a Chinese doctor, and they will feel your pulse. And I'm not sure how they can possibly do this by sensing with their fingers. This is a problem, including a lot of them that use their thumb and so forth, which means that your blood is going through there and kind of pulsing. But you're supposed to test the person's pulse. And they're able to ascertain by the strength of the pulse how particular organs are working. And of course, these things have been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it comes down to basically what is a science. But when you're getting something as sketchy as just feeling it, and this is the problem with all these things, because we haven't been able to make proper sensing equipment, it gets to be very dependent on the doctor. So, what is strong? What is weak? This meridian controls the heart, so it means your heart is weak, your liver may be weak, your kidneys may. These are all the things they check all the time. And of course, it's a very smart medicine as well because, a lot of things come down to the liver and kidneys, which are very important for so many things in your life. This is not the kind of stuff we hear about from a Spooky 2 and other things in terms of making sure that these things are taken care of properly. As I said, it's well documented in Rife that Rife had a lot of people die on him because they detox too quickly. Doesn't seem to be something that this guy and his bad science from Ralph Williams School of Engineering, for you people out there to get that or not. So the whole idea is that we have to be very, very careful of what's going on in that reality. So, um, so it's just all bad engineering from day one. And his so-called scalar units that he has out now, which is some sort of weird radionics, are giant boxes with a giant cord you got to stress from one to the other, which is much closer to a multi-wave oscillator than anything else. And his claims of projecting energy at people and everything else just doesn't hold water. That science is not valid. There's no way. Now, what also, and you can say, well, you can argue about all this all you want and say there's different whatever, and you know differently. But one of the things that we have a problem with here is when we get down into has his science degrades and degrades and degrades into the effectiveness of cold lasers. And of course, people are making claims with that. There are hundreds of these, and there's manufacturers all over China that make these wrist lasers claiming all these health benefits that I have never seen either. And I've used these units consistently, and they certainly haven't done very much whatsoever in terms of, quote, healing. But he wants to sell those, and he wants to have lots of, again, if it has more lights in it, it's better for you, right? So he wants to also run hundreds of thousands of frequencies through you because they're all good, right? Because there's nothing wrong with any frequencies, right? How about five? What is the stuff that everybody hates now? 5 gigs, 5K. What is it? 5G? Oh, that's the bad one. But you're running all of them through you. So all of this stuff doesn't make sense. I mean, to run all sorts of frequencies through you seems to me would traumatize your body. It would not help it. Again, this is just bad, sloppy science that's never been tested. So to go from top to bottom when you don't need all that stuff that may upset your body seems to be bad thinking. So when you go to an acupuncturist, he doesn't put needles all over your body and trigger everything at once. He opens up the meridians connected to that particular area that needs help, not all the meridians. Doesn't make any sense. So again, bad thinking, bad engineering, bad. So we get into all this. So let's get into the real bad area here, which can be proven by everyone. And that's his ridiculous biofeedback. Now, anytime we get into digitalization, which ironically he seems to be against, but not really, because he wants to put something in there that is techie to grab all the techie people. He doesn't want to make a really good quality analog frequency machine. He wants to make a whole bunch of other stuff. So that he can grab every market that he can get into. So he's not perfecting his tool. He's not taking where you need 2 units and making it into 1 so that, and of course, maybe he's, certainly got to charge more for that. But why get 1 unit you need and ignore the other one? It's not doing anything for people who are staking their lives on this guy's fraudulent claims. That's what disturbs me about this entire thing. So we have to be very careful with that. So the whole idea is we've got this other fraudulent thing, which is easily proved by everybody. And the bottom line is that when you do biofeedback is what they call it, and it starts telling you what's wrong with your body. Now, I've seen these many, many times. And as I said, I've seen these for over 25, 30 years. All of this stuff. And then they give you a big computer readout. And of what you've got. You've got all sorts of things that don't make any sense. But of course, they're not physical yet. There's just that vibration in your body that could manifest or not. Now, I tend to, as a person who's been dealing with these type of force energy fields that create everything, that this is true to a certain extent. So the whole idea is you made, but it is kind of bogus information, and they're not really in the physical yet. So they're in the non-electromagnetic energy spectrum, so these machines wouldn't pick it up anyway. But they come back and they'll give you a slew of things that were wrong with you. Now, a particular person who was an electronic engineer had tried this, and he got back 20 or 30 things that were wrong with him, including different types of cancers and everything else, the usual spectrum. Then he went back and tested it again, and none of the same conditions ever came up. And of course, what they're saying is that somehow by using this biofeedback, that the machine itself, I don't know why the biofeedback machine would cure it or not, but the biofeedback machine killed that aspect of the energy field in there, so it doesn't read it anymore. So this, of course, is nothing more than double talk lies. The bottom line, if you have something and you test it, let's say at 2 p.m., and then you test it at 2:15, 2:30, 2:45, 3 o'clock, you should be getting the exact same readings with very minor variations. Yet it's not what these machines do. So this is completely and totally bogus and fraudulent science. Plain and simple. None of this stuff is proven. And there's a myriad of machines out there that are telling you this. Now, we've been able recently to somehow detect certain things in the body, which is becoming very interesting. They have recently, and I just have obtained one, where they have these, quote, smart type watches that can tell you your blood pressure. And now they're claiming, which has been something that has been very difficult to do, is to ascertain your blood sugar, because blood sugar testing is very expensive. The little strips you put in there and you got to prick your finger and carry a little kit around with you are not only a pain and even painful to some extent, having to get blood out of yourself using a little, basically a pin you shoot into your finger to then produce a little drop of blood. So all of this is a arduous and expensive process. Then you take that blood and you put it on a little strip that's in a machine that then tells you your blood sugar rating. And these are expensive. These little tests can run quite a bit of money, and they're expensive to do. So if you just want to test yourself for blood sugar, it can cost you. Now, for years, I've been saying, well, why can't we do this through lasers and other things? And it has been attempted unsuccessfully, apparently. All of a sudden, I find on the market, and they're everywhere. And interestingly so, these things can be obtained for about $15 to $25. Believe that or not. And they'll tell you your blood pressure and your blood sugar, supposedly. So until I test it to find out how accurate it is, I don't know. And we're not sure, but basically you're just wearing this kind of as a watch and pushing some buttons, and it's able to ascertain this. Apparently through the use of some sort of lasers that can detect this. If this is correct, it means we're getting into a higher level. But again, they must be connecting with the blood somehow without coming in contact with it. And how are they doing it? Well, this can't be in any way electromagnetic based. It's got to be a transfer of information through a laser or photon beam, as far as I understand. I will let people know about this in the future. Most of this stuff, when you do it yourself, tends to be very bogus when you finally get down to it. But it's very cheap technology, is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, the other thing is, of course, they're getting better and better with blood pressure monitors, which apparently this is supposed to do as well. But blood pressure monitors are tricky, but they are sensing by having certain sensors within the monitors that listen to the flow of the blood through your veins, as you would normally do with a person who would take it at your doctor's office, that listens to your blood and where it goes through. So this is a technique, and they've been able basically with these machines to put in a very sound sensitive chip or whatever in the blood pressure cup so you can get good readings. But these, again, are easily manipulated, and if you're not really still and you don't have it properly put on your skin, oftentimes you get bad blood pressure readings. And a lot of people are using wrist blood pressure units and everything else. And again, all of this starts to have a problem with the actual accuracy of readings. You want the really good type that go around your biceps, and now they have one unit. You don't have to have the cup that goes on you, and then the meter that you put on a table. Now they have that the cuff, and I should say not cup, the cuff and the meter are right on there, which shouldn't be too tough to do. And they have that way you have a much better unit, because it's awkward using blood pressure monitors that are two separate pieces. But that's how John would make it, because he's a genius engineer. Let's make two big things out of dinosaur parts. So this is the kind of nonsense that you run into. So we have to be very cognizant of that. So the bottom line is, many people have checked this biofeedback stuff and none of it comes back the same. And the fact is, he continues to use this bogus technology to impress bogus idiots, so he can charge them more money for technology that is worthless. When you get 50 things back, when you get things that vary all the time, it means you have a stew of nothing. And if you taste that stew, it's usually tastes horrible and you're going to spit it out. That's usually what happens when you get these ballparks, everything's wrong with you. And this is usually what happens to all technologies to make sure that they confuse you enough. This was typical of a lot of people who do medical radiothesia readings as well. They'll come up with 50 or 60 things. And, maybe at a very base energy level, there's a weakness of this or that. Certainly this could be. But that doesn't help anybody reading what is possible, what may be there energetically, or what may be there at a tiny level. That doesn't help us. You need to work on what is the dominant problem now. And none of these units tell you that. You're never going to get the same reading over and over again. This is horrible science, and anybody calling himself an engineer that would get involved in this horrible science and these horrible machines that claim to do all this stuff shows the lack of credibility they have. And it borders on being a con man. Are you that ignorant? And people want to, of course, toss out everything that works to bring in stuff that's basically Disneyland comic book fantasies. Of course, people live in that today. We live in comic book religions. We live in comic book regular science, telling you how much they know. And of course, the boogeyman in the sky is going to take care of you. So to think that these people are somehow immune from it is not. These people are pseudo-intellectual, arrogant people pushing their false science on other people, just like regular scientific people are doing as well. They know so much, they just can't cure any problems in the bigger picture. We have no medical cures. We have no free energy. So physics and everything else, with all their theoretical nonsense and all their big eggs heads sitting together, producing absolutely nothing but ifs, ands, and maybes, I want to tell everybody else how exact they are and how wonderful they are, including a one top physicist out there who now wants to get into philosophical physicists, of how they can start talking about using science as something to make judgments on the non-physical, the height of hypocrisy and failure, because they have no place else to go. Their science is dead as a doorknob and as completely worthless as well. Because we don't need any more knobs to open doors with. But they want to have knobs all over the place that open up nothing. That's science. So we all have to understand that in the bigger picture of what's going on both sides of the aisle here. So the fact that you could just diagnose somebody as easy as they're saying here is ridiculous. It's also very illegal, and they continue to do horrible, illegal stuff here, putting people, filling their pockets with money where there's absolutely no proof. They have put not a penny, from what I can see, into any kind of serious research. They're not hiring anybody to do things. They're not doing any human studies. They're not doing any of this where they could do it inexpensively in China, and I would think there without too much of a problem. But he doesn't want to in any way prove his technology, because I don't think there's anything to prove there. He's got stuff that is confused and we don't know anything about. I've got a guy whose wife died, and he died only at 80 years old, supposedly from the overdose of Valium and alcohol, which I find hard to believe. But the bottom line is he died at 80, which is mediocre. Most people live to be 80 without a problem. And his wife died much younger than him. And we're talking about Royal Raymond Rife here. So again, we don't have that the genius of all of this stuff was able to save himself. So this becomes a problem in the whole bigger picture of what's going on, and something that we all have to watch carefully of what's going on. And this certainly is not valid technology. And anybody who gets into this ridiculous, and they call it biofeedback, where they're getting, which of course has traditional biofeedback, has absolutely nothing to do with this, but they're trying to interpret things like people have done with aura cameras and other things, where they're interpreting the energy coming back to them. This is the same thing like with, quote, lie detectors, which have never, ever worked. And what they're doing is sensing all these bio things. At the very most, you could call lie detectors as nervous detectors. And if somebody asked me, did you cut someone's head off and rape this other person, I'd kind of be nervous if somebody asked me questions like that. So the fact of that, so the bottom line is that all of lie detecting is a con game where the person doing the lie detecting is controlling everything to come up with his personal value of whether this is something. So if you say something and your body reacts negatively or jumps the fact that you're nervous to that particular question, well, that means you're lying. Well, this is complete nonsense. The same thing with all this stuff. These energies are very, very slight. The sensing capacities, voice stress analysis and all this kind of stuff. Well, all this stuff seems to me is very, very sketchy. The sensing capacity of it is just not there. It's interesting, but it really doesn't prove a lot, especially if you're going to use something like this to convict someone. And remember that lie detectors are not submissible as evidence in court, even though they're constantly used in one way or another. But the bottom line is there's no validity to it whatsoever. And people think it is some great scientific process that if your heart rate goes up because you killed somebody, and I ask you, do you know Bob Schmidt? And your heart beats a little more. Well, yeah. So the whole idea is that means that you are lying. Well, that's a great summation of the fact than just maybe being the fact that maybe you didn't like Bob Smith. Maybe he was a jerk. So your heart goes, yeah, scumbucket. So the whole idea is all this is just fraudulent. Now, the biofeedback that they're talking about apparently is hooked up to some sort of heart meridian that they are judging. Now, so the whole idea that if your heart meridian is sent a particular frequency and it doesn't like it or reacts in a particular way, that this means that that is something that is in your body. So this is what they're saying of their bio way of working. So you send a frequency in for liver cancer, and the bottom line, it comes that your heart stresses a wee bit. Now, usually to get these reactions isn't as easy as it appears, but this system, of course, knows to do it instantly. So they're getting back all this bad information from bad sensing. None of these things are overly connected to you. Most of these plates and stuff, and you can buy these types of machines on any of the big marketplaces for anywhere from about $80 up to several hundred. That does this process. And every time you use them, you get a different reading from them, which means that the technology is worthless. You can even read these kind of reviews on places like Amazon, who sells them as well. You'll find people making comments like that of how bogus the technology is. And it is very bogus. We don't have sensing capacities that can do this. So while these seem to be improving, I'm not sure we're ever going to have it to that extent. So you're going to be testing these meridians, which may or may not be open, may or may not be strong, and you're going to stimulate them in different ways. Again, what type of frequencies are you using? Are these plasma frequencies or are these basic frequencies? So again, all this stuff doesn't add up very well. We have to really define what kind of frequencies we're looking at, what kind of frequencies we're using, etc. And these are all the problems again. So I would say the last nail in the coffin, not only is he selling everything under the sun, including cold lasers, where he's got huge amounts of lights on there, more than double the lights that everybody else has on there. Usually 10 or 12 is a lot. He's got over 20. Is this good for you? You're stimulating all of that. Is that doing better effect? More is better instead of maybe one light? But he would never put out one light because people would think that's bad. And of course, that means he couldn't make money off of it. Well, what about one good light hitting a perfect spot that gets results? We have to think about what works and not what is working in his P mind of having 20 lights. Is that better? And of course, these are not inexpensive. They're actually expensive, including the fact that if silver colloidals are so great, why do we need the machine? We can get an $80 silver colloidal machine. The reason is the silver colloidals don't work well, just like his frequency machines don't work well. So we need cold lasers. We need silver colloidal machines, and God knows what else he's going to come out with. There's a whole other products there as well. He's going to come out with a whole bunch of things that he can further sell and make more and more money, because he's not doing it for the money. He's doing that to help people. Well, you're not helping people, giving them multiple products that are going to cost them $5,000 or more easily. If you get all of his stuff, you're going to be dropping $5,000 or $6,000, and I'm sure that's going to increase every year. And what is the end result for getting all that stuff? Well, again, you're not going to be getting much from it at all, from what I can see. Are you going to live in placebo heaven? Well, maybe. Maybe you'll find that everything works for it. I hope you do, and I hope you take care of your personal, mental, and physical health problems. But of course, again, John ignores treating the fields around your body that are so critical. These are the non-electromagnetic fields, which he likes to call scalar, but he doesn't even understand what scalar is, apparently, which he has called to be nothing more than a placebo effect, really slapping radionics in the face by an ignoramus way of looking at it. But I tend to think that John is an ignoramus. I tend to think that he's a very low-level person. So I don't think he gets anything. If he keeps falling back on his electrical engineer buddies and himself, if he is even a real one, but I've never been impressed by engineers. I mean, they're like everybody else. They're good ones and bad ones. As a general rule, they're brainwashed idiots. And I come from a family of brainwashed idiots. So I know that, and I've seen the stooges they are. And that can't even fix their own cars. But are working in engineering fields. So when we understand all these things, we have to look back. Now, I tend to think John's the same way. I bet he's got 2 cars on his front lawn in Kingland. I can't figure out how to fix that metal. Yeah, I bet you can, John. So that's the kind of take I have. So there's a lot of mixed science here. I don't buy that he's doing this to help people alone. His pockets are filled with cash. What is he doing with that? He's not doing research. Do you have a fund, John, to help people out, or maybe make extra tools to give to people? Do you have that? Do you have any of that? No, you don't. I'll tell you right now. Your money is going into your pockets and all your buddies in China's pockets, and you're living high on the hog. Let's not forget that. You're not out there doing this just for the good. You claim spiritual. You claim to talk to the spiritual shamans, the Taoist priests of China, and all the other Indian priests. You claim all that, but you certainly are not showing it either in your intellectual intelligence or your spiritual morality. As far as I can say at this point, there's all sorts of problems with this. And if this is another road to hell is paved with good intention reality, well, I reject it all, and I'm sick and tired of it. Time is running out. We need solutions, not fantasy people living in some sort of monkish reality while stuffing their pockets with millions of dollars and not really giving the public anything. It's time we all wake up, and it's time, if you are a serious company, that you get out there and prove it.